Welcome to the National Soccer Coaches Association of America Winter Webinar Series. I'm David Newberry, the coordinator of the NSCAA Club Standards Project, an initiative designed to raise the performance of coaches and players one club at a time. Since May 2012, we have had over 320 clubs join us, representing approximately 215,000 players and 19,500 coaches. The NSCAA is delighted to have Tom Goodman, Youth Academy Director of New England Football Club, to present today's topic, the Youth Training Session. With 37 years of playing, coaching, and professional experience in the game, Tom is extremely well qualified to provide us with an insight to coaches thinking how to approach a youth training session. Tom is an expert in the development of youth soccer players and coaches. He has over 20 years of classroom teaching experience and 37 years of playing the game, coaching players of all ages and levels, and then mentoring and instructing coaches. Tom has held a variety of leadership positions in youth soccer clubs and is the former U.S. Youth Soccer National Director of Coaching Education and Mass Youth Soccer Technical Director. Amongst his many accomplishments, Tom has authored several books and articles on the topic of player and coach development. And welcome, Tom, to this presentation for the second time in the year.
Thank you, David. Welcome, coaches. In an effort to provide the best opportunity for our youth players to develop, I would like to take a look at the training environment for our youth players. In my opinion, we need to make it look like soccer.
And Tom, I'm just going to give you the controls now so you can forward the screens.
Great, thank you. Good to go, Dave?
Yeah, if you just click on it, you should be good.
When setting up a training environment, coaches, our most important concern is the who. Who are we coaching? Our young personnel. Their age and ability will determine what kind of training environment we set up. Certainly, if we were to consider under sixes, our 4- and 5-year-olds, we're interested in creating a training environment that honestly really has nothing whatsoever to do with soccer, but is composed of fun games that really allow these kids to get comfortable with a soccer ball. If we head to the U12 age group, we're certainly looking at technical refinement and speed. Can we create a training environment that will get our players to work on technical refinement and execution in a faster way? We encourage this through the addition of the pressures only the game can present. In other words, can we make it look like soccer? I believe that we must always stay true to the principles of coaching. We must be organized. We must observe our players, demonstrate, and provide information. As I look at each one of these individually, our organization has to be extremely good. The progression of our training section. Is it simple to complex? How do we use equipment? How do we manage the time in the training session? How do we use our field space? How do we organize our players? The observation portion is key to the demonstration and the information. Are we watching our players so that when we have something good to say, that it will be meaningful to the players? Are we demonstrating and painting good soccer pictures in our training sessions? And then finally, when we're giving feedback to our players, is it good, simple feedback? Hopefully catching them doing something well in the training session and reinforcing that positive experience. As coaches, we must be cognizant of the principles of our game when creating the training environment. Just a quick review of those principles. When we talk about principles of attack, of course, we're talking about penetration, support, width and length, mobility, and improvisation, that creative part of our individual players. On the defending side of the ball, we're talking about pressure, cover, balance, compactness as a team, and then counterattack. For example, many times we spend much too much time in 360-degree possession games in a space the size of a postage stamp. We forget about the concept and the principle of penetration, which in my opinion should always be part of any possession activity. Training session design. How do we actually design the training session and make it realistic to the game? Make it look like soccer? Well, we have to take into account a number of things. We have to take into account the demands of the game. In our activities, in our training session, do we have the demands of the game involved? Things like the moving ball, body and ball control, decision-making, opposition, the stresses of the game. We talk about the elements of the game as well. And some of these are repetitive, but it bears repeating. Some of the elements we're concerned with here are ball, teammates, field of play, direction of play, objectives. Things like goals and targets are the objectives of the game. Opponents, decision-making. Components of the game that I'm sure everybody's familiar with. Do our activities challenge each player to involve the components of the game? The technical component, which of course is the how. How do we perform the skill? How well do we perform the technique? The decision-making part, the tactical component, the physical component, and the psychological component. I think anytime you make an activity or a training session look like the game and mirror the game, then you are including all the components of the game. Finally, training variables. How do we as coaches use things like the goals? Number of goals, size of goals, shape of goals. How do we use the field, the size of the field, the shape of the field, the divisions, the thirds of the field? Balls, number of balls, placement of balls, service of balls. How do we use our players? Do we play numbers up? Do we play numbers down? This is all going to determine what we pull out of our training session, what we pull out of our players. Other training variables, rules, restrictions, incentives, offsides, point systems. I don't know how many times when I'm instructing at our national coaching schools where I will observe coaches, coaching candidates, put a point system on a particular game, but never keep track of the points. So it's important, if we're going to use certain training variables, that we in fact do keep track of them in our training sessions. Lesson plan content is a huge, it's huge in the actual incorporation of a good training environment. Does the plan look like soccer? Will the players understand where the practice fits into the game? Are the objectives for the players realistic? As we look at a lesson plan, and I'm sure this is not news to you as coaches and soccer enthusiasts, but as we look at our lesson plan, is it simple to complex? If you compare a soccer lesson plan to a classroom lesson plan, a mathematics lesson plan, we always start out with a warm-up and then gradually move into more and more competitive type activities. For instance, can we create activities that replicate the game right from the get-go? Case in point, warm up, if I was to warm up for a passing and receiving session for my U10s or my U12s, do I have 2 players or 3 players or 4 players in stationary mode just knocking the ball back and forth? Or can I actually put them in a grid and have them moving up and down the field, maintaining some shape, still getting lots of repetition in passing and receiving, and, by the way, getting a good warm-up. Slowly but surely building up that pace so that we work on the technical speed aspect, and then gradually move into more competitive and challenging activities. Player considerations on our lesson plan delivery. We all know that that as coaches we like to provide information, but the game is the best teacher, and our players do need time for uninterrupted play. Our players need to concentrate. They need to hear the game. They need to establish a rhythm of play. They need to have a chance to solve problems on their own. Are we as coaches creating that type of training environment? It's a question only you can answer as a coach. Or are we overly impressed with ourselves and feel like we need to give a dissertation and share all of the information, all the knowledge we have with the player? It's a good question to ask as you develop a quality training session. From the coach's side, on lesson plan delivery, we should be using different ways to share information with our players, and that may be asking good, quality, provoking questions. We like to say that it's important to use the coach's toolkit. In other words, there's a number of different ways to solve the problem, a number of different ways to share information as a coach. So as we're delivering our lesson plan, are we using the toolkit, allowing the conditions of the game to coach the theme? This is the best tool in the toolkit. Can you create activities that draw out of the players what you need to draw out, whether that is technical speed, good decision making? An example, for U6 players, instead of having the little ones dribble around and a coach throwing up his hand and asking the players while they're dribbling how many fingers they have up, which in the whole scheme of the game of soccer we would never do ever on the soccer field, have our players look straight up into the sky. We have now gotten into this little game of gate dribbling, where kids naturally look for the next gate to dribble through, picking up their head just enough to find the next place to go. So we're progressing. We're progressing as a coaching organization and a coaching brotherhood and sisterhood. How about playing the end zones? You can attract, you can sort of pull out of the players timing of runs and timing of passes. If that end zone really replicates an offsides line. So allowing the conditions of the game to coach the team is very important, and in my opinion, the most important tool in the toolkit. Coaching at natural stoppages, coaching in the flow of the game, coaching individual players as the game continues with simple information, positive information that will help the players to play the game better. And probably the most lengthy and the most interruptive, the freeze method, but definitely the best way to paint a picture, a quality soccer picture for your players. Final thoughts, coaches. Find ways to make the training environment competitive. So the sooner you can get into a competitive training activity that replicates the game, the better it is for your kids. Because at the end of the day, our players get better at playing soccer by playing soccer. Demand technical precision at all ages. Hold players accountable for their decisions on the field. Keep the session flowing. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're working with national team players or under sixes, it has to be fun. Players have to look forward to participating in your training sessions. It is a game after all. Thank you, coaches.